Hello and welcome back to Warhammer Workshop. Boy, have I got something for you today. It's mostly something for me, to be honest, because I just got a whole shipment of Tyranids. So you all be remembering the battle for Ogarth, that planet that the Tyranids somehow won. Well, the preview for that also gave us a bunch of really cool Tyranids, and Games Workshop saw fit to send me almost everything. Almost. So, quick look. If you haven't seen the preview, I'll just go over what I received, and I'll tell you what's missing, and you'll see why it's not a big deal. So we got 3 Lictor variant here. We got Deathleaper, which was already previewed on Warhammer Community a while back. Really cool dude. He's got a cape, which is a little bit weird for a Tyranid to have. I mean, Tyranids don't necessarily accessorize all that much, but they made it all organic, and you could think of it as like it does have this kind of squid thing going on with all the tentacles. So it does look organic, but at a glance, it feels a bit heroic for a Tyranid. But then again, Deathleaper is a special character. We also got a teaser that he will be usable as a sort of warlord for an army composed of mostly Lictors, which kind of gives us a hint of what to expect from the Codex. We've got a resculpt of our standard typical Lictor, which is great. We needed one of those. He was metallics until recently, about a decade and a half ago, when they changed him to Finecast. We all mixed reviews about Finecast. Like, it was terrible at launch because they clearly rushed the quantities that they needed for it. But eventually they sort of stabilized, but by that time the damage to the reputation had been done. Then we got this unexpected little fella here, the Neurolictor, which I guess is a psychic Lictor. I'm really curious to see what his rules are going to be about. All they mentioned is that he would be a Lictor that has psychic abilities, probably a good character killer like all Lictors and Lictor type bio creatures. Except this one hopefully also has Synapse, which having an infiltrating stealth Synapse creature in the back line is really going to help. Then we got a Biovore model, which is actually a dual kit between a Biovore and a Pyrovore. It's a one figure, so it says 4 miniatures, but that is because you get 1 Biovore / Pyrovore and then 3 biomines because of the rules for the Biovore, if you remember. This is a completely different sculpt from what we're used to. The previous metallic / Finecast models were a lot orkier, and I'm guessing that they're abandoning this. We had a little bit of a talk about that on 40K Radio when we reviewed the preview. Mixed feelings about that. I liked the bulkiness of the original Biovore. I liked how it basically harkened back to the idea that they were borrowing orc DNA to create these bio creatures. Unfortunately, gone. Then we finally have a resculpt of the Hormagaunt. That is a much needed, much awaited resculpt. Seeing that we got Termagants with the launch of Leviathan, it makes sense that they would give us that. But having it actually there is a relief. One thing that I love about this, well, it comes with some rippers. So the more you get of this and Termagants, the more rippers you have. Eventually you can make a unit. But also they seem to have recentered the Hormagaunts, the mauls on the bases, made a few of them a little bit more vertical, a little bit more compact. This way, if you've played with units of 20 or 30, back when we could make 30, Hormagaunts, you know how hard it is to move them around the table, especially to get them close together, base-to-base contact for those close combats. These mauls should make that a lot easier, probably not perfect. There are a lot more dynamic poses. Some of them have very cool raptor-inspired poses, which is awesome. So I already have 90 Hormagaunts. I don't know if I've got it in me to add more, but I guess we'll see how bored I am at some point. Then we've got Genestealers. From the get-go, if I were to say something, I don't think Genestealers needed a resculpt all that badly. Not that they don't benefit from it. This resculpt looks neat, very dynamic, cool pauses, some tactical rocks and tubes, which is great. But they don't look super different. Like, they've obviously got a bit more detail and texture. I think the most important thing about getting new Genestealers was to repackage them in boxes of 10 instead of boxes of 8. And Genestealers are such a classic for Games Workshop. Like, they're a 40K staple, almost on level with Terminators. So it makes sense that they're on yet another iteration. This will be the third plastic kit that we get for Genestealers outside of special editions, like we've seen for re-releases of Space Hulk. And then there's this bastard, Norn Emissary. If you've read the fluff for Leviathan, the words Norn Emissary come up a few times. And of course, if you're a classic enjoyer of 40K, you've heard of Norn Queens. They've been mentioned in the fluff a lot, and we've been wanting a model for them. Not quite what we were looking for. This is obviously, you see from the size of the box, you see a massive model, big model, but pictures that we've seen so far kind of make it comparable in size. It's bigger than a Wraithlord, which sounds great 25 years ago when Wraithlords were metallic and they were one of the biggest models you could get. Now, if they would have said this is the size of a Wraith Knight, I would have been happier. But this leaves room for maybe eventually having the Norn Queen be a Knight-sized model. Fingers crossed. Been wishing for that for 5 years. We'll see what happens. Now, the Norn Emissary is this kind of weird psychic creature that's meant to be single purpose, annihilate something specific. It was hinted that there would be rules that are very clear about that. But it also comes with its dual kit where you can also build a Norn Assimilator, which looks like a less psychic, more close combat version. It's got these nasty poisonous looking claws. I'm going to have a hard time deciding which one of these two I'm going to want to build. Now, this is quite the haul. Very happy about it. And the kit that I mentioned is missing is a new kit for Hormagaunts. And that new kit has options for different guns. And this is something that wasn't in this package. Now, not super unhappy about that because I've already got a lot of Hormagaunts to paint. And much like with the Hormagaunts, I am not sure I've got it in me to toss around and have another go at yet another box of these. Not yet. Not with everything else I've got going on. Now, of course, this wouldn't be an unboxing video if we didn't open a few boxes and look at what's inside. I'm going to go by order of importance, starting with some of the quote-unquote a little bit more boring kits, the repackaging and resculpts. We're going to start with Hormagaunts. They don't have a lot of options, but it'll be nice to have a quick look at the sculpts. Forgive me for using ye ancient knife. Look at this thing. It's probably older than most of you. Anyways, so this is 11 miniatures. We know there's 10 Gaunts and there's 1 Ripper base. I don't know if any of you Tyranid players out there have had the opportunity to crack open and build one of those Rippers. They are a lot cooler than the originals that we're used to. All right, so we've got bases, no one cares. And we've got the Hormagaunts. I was hoping that much like the kits from Leviathan, these would be a little bit different from what we got in the previous edition, the previous versions of these kits. But apart from the heads, they're a single piece, which is great. Very happy about that. Everything else looks very similar. We still get the paw, like the one section where you have 1 claw and 1 hoof. You got the main body. And I guess you have another section, then you have 2 separate claws the same way, ball joints with little pegs. So I guess there's a bit of variety you can get from there. These still look like they're a little bit complicated to put together, to be honest. I'm not unhappy about that. Like I like having this kind of variety so that there's options to pose them and move things around. But it's surprising because the Leviathan Termagants were a lot simpler. But then again, those are push fit, and push fit are meant to be easier. Not much to see here. There's a little bit more texture on the carapace. If you look closely, you can see like more ridges and things like that. But otherwise, it's a very standard kit. Now, there is one thing I want to see, because this is going to come in handy and be very interesting later on, is these things do come with some rules, some basic rules. They don't have any special rules. It's mostly stat lines and weapons. But that means that when we get to some of the other more complicated creatures from these boxes, we may get a bit of an insight as to what to expect rule-wise. Genestealers are probably not that complex. One thing that was mentioned in the preview is how there were a lot of options to customize them, not necessarily for rules, but for their appearance. Because there's the, and I hate to try to pronounce this, the Ymargard Genestealers, the ones with the Cthulhu faces, which are very cool. And look at that, like first thing that comes out of the box is exactly that. And you can see like the squid thing that I was talking about regarding the Deathleaper, they're repeating that pattern here. You've got your standard just tentacles. Well, I guess the folds are probably still there, just hidden because tentacles aren't extended. But here you have them like in full extension. You can see that skin flap between the tentacles. And I think that's rad. That's very cool. I'm a little bit surprised that they managed to make they decided to make this into 3 sprues. The Termagants, well, the Hormagaunts were 2 sprues. These they made 3, probably because they wanted to add all these options. And these look like way more complicated models than what we had before. Get a lot of heads. I think you have enough heads that you can do an entire unit either with the tentacle faces or with the normal faces. You still have things like the extended tongues. I don't know if you've still got the yeah, they still have the testicle face, except they're a little less hangy from the chin as the previous one. But for the sort of toxin sacs or venom spit that they used to have rules for. Now, unless they re-add these rules in the codex, we're not going to see any of these as options. These are completely and purely aesthetic. But it's still cool to have him around, and maybe that's also a way of future-proofing in case in future editions they do go back to these options. You don't want to have him completely removed from the kits. And it does look like you have, like right there, you've got 5 heads just here for the tentacles. I'm pretty sure there's another 5 elsewhere. There's definitely another 3 here. If there's another 2 on the other one, we are in good shape. So yeah, definitely have all the options there. All in all, it's a cool kit. I like it. I like that there's more variety. It's weird that they went with more pieces instead of less compared to the previous kit. But then again, if they're going to be doing this kind of cool stuff, one thing that they did remove, though, because the rules are no longer there, is the sort of cyst, the little spore spit cyst that they had for that you could use to spawn Genestealers in, I think it was 8th edition. No longer have that. They do have a little manhole cover, although that's probably part of a base. Anyways, it's like I said, it's a cool kit. Like I said, I didn't feel it was as necessary, but anytime they do one of these updates, necessary or not, we get some neat models. Unfortunately, I have about 40 Genestealers already. I can't even field all the Genestealers I own in a standard army because these are not battle line. So it's a little disheartening. I don't know. Do I paint them and just have 1 unit of each generation, or do I just give them away or something? And the last of the resculpt, which is, this one is an upgrade from metals and fine cast to plastic. So this is our first plastic Lictor. If you've, although we've seen Von Ryan Leapers, they are kind of like Lictors, but this is the actual dude. This is the guy, and he does, like Von Ryan Leapers, you can get 3 models on one of these sprues, and this is just one dude. So obviously and clearly you can see from the number of pieces that he is a complex guy. Not just his personality, but how to build him. Now, there are a lot of options. You'll notice that there's pieces to do different types of faces, and you can see that these options are reflected on the box art. You've got 2 different heads that you can make, different positions for his mantis claw, which is great. The mantis claws are still different pieces, so these are probably posable pieces. When you assemble them, you get the option. And you get to position him on his little tactical piece of terrain. There's a lot of tiny little pieces. This is going, I hate to say it, but Weird Games, the guys behind Malifaux, had a tendency towards very, very small, very easy to lose pieces. I mean, each of these claws is its own little thing. This is going to be a nightmare to assemble. These are not push fit, obviously. Oof. Yeah, this is one where you don't want your clippers to send a piece flying across the room. And you get 2 pairs of legs, so again, variety for poses, which is cool. Like, you'll probably want more than 1 Lictor if you want them to be as efficient as they're as advertised. These are great character killers, and characters are definitely a thing in this game that are fun to get rid of, especially if you're fighting armies like Necrons or Genestealer cults that rely on characters for their synergy. And now we get into the new stuff. All right, the least new stuff of new stuff is Deathleaper, because we've seen him in an earlier, more detailed preview, but he is still kind of cool. And there's definitely something I want to see about his rules. The rules that come in these boxes are very lean, very threadbare. There's not much meat to them, mostly because they don't want to have text, so that they don't have to have large paragraphs in 6 different languages. So this is a much bigger base than what we're used to seeing for your standard Lictor or Deathleaper, which are Lictor. I should have checked base size, and maybe I'll go back and check it out, but this looks like a 50 millimeter. Meanwhile, Lictors were usually, at least in the old days, on 40 millimeter bases. But then again, this is a horrid creature, and you can see it just from the size. Let's bring back the Sleeper. this Lictor for a second. Let's just compare some of these sprues so that we can get an idea pre-build of the difference in scale. Look at that. So this is the Mantis claws from the Lictor, and this is the one from right next to it right here, the one from Deathleaper, and it is massive. It may not be that much longer, but it is way bulkier, which kind of testifies to the strength of the creature. There's a lot of terrain that comes with Deathleaper also. Lots of pieces here and there to create the base that he stands on, which is great. Like if you like painting things with object source lighting, whenever you have large pieces of terrain like that on a model, it is awesome. So quick look at the Lictor base. So yeah, here's what I thought. Here's what I was thinking. So this is larger than a 40 millimeter. This is probably a 50, which means that this would be a 60. I don't know, I feel like 60s were a bit bigger. Maybe I'm just finally growing up. So this is bigger than what we used to have for Lictors, and this is bigger than what we have now for Lictors, just showing the heroic nature of the Deathleaper as a model. Deathleaper is a unique model. You can't have more than one, so obviously if you're going to do them, you want to do them right. Now, a quick look at the rules in the back. Yeah, I was afraid of that. There's not much to them. You've got like a standard stats and his weapons, but none of the special rules. It doesn't tell you if it functions as a leader, which is sort of what I was hoping for. I can't remember if in the preview they had mentioned that he was a leader, that you could put him in a unit of, say, probably not Lictors, because Lictors are units of one, but if you could put him in a unit of Von Ryan Leaper, that would give him some ablative wounds, which we're kind of used to seeing for characters these days, and also have him have some kind of boost that you can give the Von Ryan Leapers, because I don't know if you've used them in your games so far. They're not bad, but they're not great. They're very difficult to manage their positioning. Staying in the Lictor subspecies, let's have a look at the Neurolictor. Now that we've had a look at the those stat cards at the back of the instruction manuals, I'm not very optimistic that this guy is going to have thorough rules that tells us what he does. I don't know. I don't think we'll know right off the bat if he's got that synapse keyword. Oh, he must, right? He's got to have it. Look at him. He's got his brain sticking out. I mean, Neurothropes also have their brains sticking out, but they're Neurothropes. Like, I don't expect them to be synapse. And they are synapse relays. He's a tiny sprue. He's got a base about the size as the Lictor, which makes sense. And he is a much simpler kit, which is a massive relief. Look at that. This is a single piece going up all the way down to the floor. And yeah, he is literally half the pieces of a Lictor. I have a feeling he's going to be very popular, especially if he's a Synapse creature, because reinforcing that back line with an infiltrating Synapse creature, that's going to be great. I think he's going to be one of the ones I'm going to try to build as soon as possible. And yeah, unfortunately, Neurothrope, as expected, Neurolictor, sorry, as expected. Not exactly a lot in the stat line. We can see like his weapons, but that's all subject to change, and without the special rules, there's really no point. So I guess that's it for Neurolictor. He's still probably the coolest model out of this entire new range. I'm eager to see what he does on the tabletop. Until then, let's keep digging. Biovore / Pyrovore. Now, again, I obsess about the weirdest things. I'm very curious if what basis size these guys ended up on. I suppose the Biomines are probably still on 25 millimeter. There's no reason to change that. I have a ton of Biomines, and here's the kicker. I also have 6 Biovores already and 3 Pyrovores, except they are conversions. They are cool conversions I'm attached to. but they are very well integrated into the bases I made for them, and I do not look forward to having to rebase them if these guys change. Now, we are looking at 60mm bases. Yes, perfect. That hasn't changed. Just going to confirm it because they do mention base size in the instructions. And damn it, that's an 80mm base. I'm so unhappy. Well, we're supposed to be able to still be allowed to use the previous base sizes. I'll look at what the actual rules are on tournaments, but it sucks that I actually have to pay attention to that. Ooh. Now, that being said, these are still 25mm. I can recognize 25mm very easily. He says, looking sideways into the manual just to be sure. Yeah, it's 25mm. But the biomines look bulkier than what I'm used to. These look chunky biomines. The model itself isn't too complicated. It looks so much bigger on the box because, I don't know, there's something about the way he's positioned, like the claws and everything. He looks like very massive, but all told, I think he's going to be about the same bulk as a normal Biovore. I think the reason he's on 80mm base is mostly to compensate for those spider legs that are all over the place. The previous versions of the Biovore and the Pyrovore, very compact, very all their limbs drawn in. This guy is like on these tiny limbs. I'm eager to see how much I can reposition some of these legs, just so I can give them different spider positions. I like the idea of having one that's kind of reeling back with, like, or just pushing forward so it looks like it's bracing itself to shoot, especially for Biovores. These things shoot their mines up to 48 inches. So there's you want them to look like they need to brace themselves. All in all, it's a cool model. You don't get much information from the pieces. It does look like they created this in a way that pieces of chitin overlap each other. In that way, probably hide any mold marks or any assembly marks as you assemble them, which is something I've noticed Games Workshop doing more and more with their models. It makes it so much easier to assemble things and not have to worry about filling gaps, which is always great. It's going to be interesting also to see what we can do, because you get both cannons. You get the Biovore cannon and the Pyrovore cannon. Curious to see if there's an easy way to switch them out with magnets or just with the assembly. Games Workshop's also been getting better at doing this. It's a little hard to tell. We could have a look very quickly in the manual to see how it looks. But if there's a way of switching them out easily, being able to go from one unit of Biovore to a unit of Pyrovore would be interesting and economical. It looks like they have, yeah, these are different positions, not anything different about the creature itself, but otherwise the cannon, it's all about how the cannon assembles. And it doesn't look like it can snap on. It's got these little legs, so I'm assuming both of them have that going on. Oh, one of them, Pyrovore, I believe, has this weird spine in the back that also assembles. It is a separate piece. It doesn't attach to the cannon exactly. This may be one of the things that makes it a little complicated to switch back and forth with magnets or just through the assembly. Anyways, I'm definitely, when I start assembling this one, I'm going to look at options to be able to switch back and forth. Not that I need more Biovores. I'm mostly just curious. It's a question I'm sure I'm going to get from other Tyranid enthusiasts. We're always looking for a way to optimize our purchases, especially as the range for Tyranids is growing and getting bigger. It's not always feasible economically to buy. This is one model per box with the biomines, but it's really essentially just one Biovore or Pyrovore per box. So you're going to need 3 of those. Optimistically, this is going to be $60 a pop, $180 for a unit. I don't want to call it prohibitively expensive, but it ain't cheap. And now I kept this for the last so that you guys would either skip ahead or bear with me for the entire unboxing. But the Norn Emissary. Norn Emissary looks like it is 80% model and 20% base. Look at that thing. Look at how much detail that base has. If ever you're doing your own thing with your bases and you're not using the one that comes with the Norn Emissary, you're going to have some nice pieces to do some terrain with. All right. Now, we were promised that this was going to be a massive model. And, I mean, it is a big box. This is the same footprint as your standard monster or tank box. It's not super thick. This is about the size of an orc truck box. So big for a Tyranid model, not the biggest Tyranid model. I have a feeling that this is not going to cast a long shadow over things like a Tyrannofex or a Haruspex, which are massive tanks. Except this guy's standing upright, so that's going to make him big that way. It's going to be tall, if not massive. Now, just look at the amount of detail in that base. This is crazy. This is one of those things where dry brushing and using contrast and anything that really picks out texture for you is going to do a lot of mileage. And they've been doing this a lot. This is something I've noticed in all the Leviathan things, is you'll have mechanical pieces of masonry or tubes, and then you've got these sort of mycelic veins, like a little bit like mushrooms just creeping all over the technology. And that's very cool. Like picking those out in a specific color. I pick out mine out the same color as I do the skin on my Tyranids. So you've got this dark gray, and on top of it, you've got this light green that really stands out. It's really neat. So half of this sprue is scenery, which really speaks volume to how much scenery you can expect. So you've got this piece here that's like the rocks, and it probably goes on top, I'm assuming. You got these those two massive arms that we were talking about. That's on the Assimilator. See the detail on them. Lots of little spores and pouches and little bladders that you can paint different colors like they did on the box art. And you've got one head. And you've got the massive rest of the model here. And the Norn Emissary and the Norn Assimilator have different hands. Like they both have, I believe, these hands here, the little rending talon type things. But this guy, the Norn Emissary, has scything talons, but like triple jointed. They look kind of weird. You can see it here that they have multiple joints, which is reminiscent if you have a Demicrodon, the Forge-World model also had multi-joint limbs like that, which made it cool. So yeah, you've got all the pieces with the brain, a lot of possibilities for OSL, object source sliding here. This is not going to be a model that I think is going to be easy to switch back and forth between the two configurations. I'm too lazy to try to insert that many magnets into a model these days. I used to be more enterprising that way. Look at the amount of texture on that. But that being said, again, this model, these legs are smaller than the ones on the Screamer Killer. This tail is smaller than what you'd get on a Tyrannofex. This is not a massive knight-sized model. It is big, but it is big in the same way you expect a Hive Tyrant to be big. Here we have what I suspect is our 80mm base. And we can take a few minutes and have a quick look. I'm sorry, this is 100mm. I remember when I started playing with Games Workshop models, there were about 3 sizes. So a quick look. Of course, you've got your 2 configurations. I may be wrong. Maybe it is possible to make it easier to switch. But then again, it's like it's switching out all the arms, the head, tip of the tail. I mean, the tip of the tail you can probably just not worry about if you want, but otherwise, it looks like a cool kit. I suspect there's going to be a lot of sub-assemblies to putting that one together. And definitely a lot of painting to go with it. as far as rules are concerned, we've determined like these rules are way too threadbare for us to get much out of them. We can, however, see that what kind of model we're dealing with as far as stat lines. A very fast model, about the speed of a Hormagaunt. I'm assuming this is, if I remember clearly, this is toughness 11. One of my biggest complaint is how many models, like large model, have a toughness of 9, like the Hive Tyrant, which means that they're still not on a 6+ versus strength 5, which is annoying. 2+ armor save, very cool. 4+ invulnerable on the Emissary. 16 wounds, 7+. I'm assuming that's leadership. And 5 objective control, which is neat. So, all in all, a cool haul. I will be painting at least 2 of these models. Spoilers, it's going to be the Norn Emissary, and it's going to be the Neurolictor. I know it's a little bit boring because both of them are the models that have exposed brains. I may at the last minute switch between the Emissary and the Assimilator, but we'll see how I feel about that. Otherwise, guys, I hope this is not the last model dump that we get for Tyranids. This guy's a nightmare to put back in his box. Well, I hope it's not the last thing we get for Tyranids. I'm still holding out for having a Norn Queen or having some kind of knight-sized models for Tyranids. We don't have that yet. It feels like an injustice that we don't have our big knight-sized thing going on. Almost all the cool kids, all the classic old-style armies have them. Space Marines have access to knights. The Eldars have the Wraith Knight. There's Gorkanauts and Morkanauts for the Orcs. Of the classic top 4 original armies, the ones that missing a knight-sized model is Tyranids. I hope you get it. If not, next edition, I guess.
Materials shown in this video are provided fully or in part by Games Workshop for promotional purposes. If you enjoyed this video, please consider dropping us a like and subscribing. Thanks for watching.